There you go.
Okay.
I got audio.
All right. Now I can hear you.
Perfect. Wonderful.
Easy snap.
Check. Check 1 2. Check 1
Now I can
2.
hear you. Now I can hear you. But you cannot hear me. Is that right?
I hear you through the speakers on the laptop.
Through the laptop. But if you cannot hear me,
I
right?
can hear you now because I put
You
the
can't
switcher.
hear me.
Yes.
Okay. So the problem now is that I'm hearing myself like a second after I talk.
Wonderful.
So we have to disable that route.
How do we do so?
Give me 1 second.
Understandably so.
glasses. Damn it. It's too late for you. You need to go get them?
Yeah.
Wow, that was at me? Is that because I complained last month because you couldn't see it?
You just, you can just tell me. You say it has three eyeballs or four eyeballs.
This is the month I was supposed to
Yeah,
be
my
with
crap, right?
but we haven't had a Zoom set for it, so I had to have him here anyways. So it's kind of like two birds, one stone. We got him here, but this is
Now I can see people better.
Thank you.
Because that's sick.
What are we doing? Oh, he just sent us a text. I think so.
Have you seen yourself in the mirror with your glasses on?
Do I look stupid? I know.
No, I mean, so you know what you actually look like.
I look like a dork.
Just a blur.
It's a blur. Because I can only see close up. This is
You
far
can see
away.
close up?
Yeah.
I'm the opposite.
I know.
Hey there.
Far.
Yeah.
You can see like right here.
Me to put long sleeves on.
Well, I'm in
Tell me text.
this inside all day at a conference room. Body temperature's low. So.
It was cold in that place.
Oh, yeah. Wednesday night.
Yeah, that was brutally cold.
Yeah, for anything like that, I used to wear the long sleeve shirts or the jacket.
Oh, I know. I look at the thermostat when we're walking out.
What was it, like 65?
65.
Really? Man, there's a lot of hot air in the room, but
Yeah, true. Very true, very true.
how you doing, Mark?
So you gonna take League of Cities next year?
Is that with gas or without gas?
Lauren, can you hear us? I can't. Lauren, can you hear us?
I can hear you.
Okay,
Can you hear me?
you're loud and clear.
Oh, thank you, thank you.
I do not believe so. I only have two people on right now. How do I? There's only two participants right now.
Are you trying to add,
There's someone else that should be joining.
do they have to go like, to the meeting? Mm-hmm. Okay, then they just have to get on with the link.
Okay, we're still waiting on him. Do we want to go ahead and get started, and then I'll let you know when I see him? Okay.
Interestingly enough, though, never important. Well, it was actually a pretty good fight. As secure as can be, especially for his side.
Yeah.
Somehow they mismanaged the hell out of it.
Okay.
And it just didn't cut it.
because it's easier for minutes, because people talk so fast and,
Yeah, you get to see the spelling of the name
yes.
and their address.
Hey, all, we're going to give it a minute. If anybody wants to fill, or if you want to comment, make sure you fill out the comment card.
I would imagine.
Giuseppe,
I can hear you very well. Can you hear me?
we can hear you loud and clear.
Fantastic. Good evening, everybody.
We're going to start the meeting shortly. Just give us a few minutes to do some housekeeping, okay?
No problems. Go ahead.
That'll be an interesting color. What's that? Whatever.
All right, we'll call the meeting to order. Start with Pledge of Allegiance.
States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thanks for coming. Couple housekeeping things. Town is under the weather, so he will not be joining us today. We have Molly filling in for him. She's the acting town manager. Lauren had a death in the family, so he's traveling, but he is with us via Zoom. So do we need to make a motion, Paul, to admit him? Or? All right, does council have any issues with approving Lauren to join and vote remotely?
No objection.
All right, so Lauren is, because we have a quorum, Lauren can now vote. Changes to the agenda. Let's see, we've added item B6, and we are removing the town manager performance goal next month because Mike is not here. So that brings us to the presentation for the boardwalk, which I have some thoughts before we hand it over. So it's the boardwalk. It's something that I've kind of looked at since the beginning when I was mayor, and you know I've always thought it was kind of a rundown, not rundown, but you know it needed some sprucing up. So you know back in the day it was the casino way back, and then it was the Bahama Beach Club after that, and so now it's just kind of a utilitarian spot, right? And the playground, which obviously has spruced things up a little bit. So I talked about making it a quote-unquote destination. What does that mean? That is not something meant for tourists, although tourists, you know, they come here to the beach anyway, and they do help support our local businesses. So we need to be cognizant of that. The businesses, they can't survive on residents alone. So you know what I've envisioned is a nature-filled gathering space where people can exercise, they can have a meal from a local restaurant, maybe just relax, taking the views of the ocean. And so I think a revitalized boardwalk would probably accomplish that goal. I know, you know, everybody wants to stay the same with the, you know, it's great place, nice, quiet, quaint place. I think that's what everybody likes about it. But towns do change, and we just need to guide that change. You know, by making these choices or taking deliberate steps to kind of guide what we want. In the past, you know, people complain about the two surf styles. You know, 25, 30, 35 years, probably something could have been done to prevent that, you know. So inaction by council back then, you know, and I'm not pointing fingers at anybody, but, you know, they maybe could have done that. You know, they could have done something with the architectural guidelines, review board, you know. So instead of having a main street that is a lot of professional buildings with very little aesthetic appeal, you know, there weren't any actions taken to kind of to guide that. So and then the boardwalk we have now, it's old, it's run down, at no fault of Joe and his crew. They do a hell of a job doing what they can with it. But you know, it's not what it was back in the day. But then if we look at ways that that councils have taken action in the past, you know, we have an ordinance, right, that protects our children by restricting where sex offenders live. You know, basically anything within 2,000 feet, I believe, of a park or a school or something else, basically covers the entire town. The previous councils have also limited short-term rentals, right, outside of the tourist. So that kind of keeps the residential feel that we like. And then also the drive-through restrictions, right? By enacting that, you know, kind of drive-throughs in general kind of take away from the nice small town feel. So, you know, that's three there where people have taken action, past councils have taken action, and still kept the small, quaint, oriented beach town that we are. So if we continue to make thoughtful choices, we can guide some of this change into something that we want. And I think by maybe moving forward with a boardwalk, there's this boardwalk or not, but I think we can make the town what we all envision, and keeping that nature feel. As far as the how we got to this point with the people that we have with us, planners, I don't know when it was, beginning of this year, kind of made it a priority.
Time in the March timeframe, maybe March, April.
Somewhere around there, the council made it a priority to kind of put this, you know, on the to-do list, I guess. So Mike and Lauren set up an account on Upwork, and not an RFB, not a bid process, but there were several applied, I guess, for it. And then it was narrowed down to, I don't know, 6 or 8 people, and then we picked the top 3, and Mike and I, we interviewed the top 3, and we ended up with Paradox Architects. They were the first ones that we interviewed, and I was looking for somebody with a creative mind. One of their projects in Philadelphia, I won't go into the details, but it showed their creativity and what could be done with a space that I didn't know that could be done. So, you know, with our boardwalk, all we have, it's a straight shot down Wavecrest, and couldn't envision what it would be. So they came up with an idea that, you know, it was really creative. So I really like that. So though we interviewed them first, we interviewed 2 more, but I knew for me we were gonna go with Paradox. So let's see. Yeah, so when we met with them after we decided to go with them, I gave them some pictures, some videos. Mike gave me some videos of the town. I drove around the town showing, you know, that we're laid back, you know, nothing, you know, upper to, or middle to upper middle class, you know, other than obviously on the ocean, you know, we're all pretty modest and modest area. So we like nature, we like the family-oriented feel of the town. So I just wanted to give them what, you know, kind of give them an idea of what the town looked like. So we gave them pretty much artistic freedom to come up with something. We didn't want to limit them. We kind of said, hey, give us if the budget is a Toyota, then we'll go with the Toyota. So at this point, we have the basic concept, and we'll be discussing that after the presentation, and we will also be discussing moving forward or not with detailed schematics, which would be the next step. So that is where we are at. So Giuseppe, are you ready?
I am indeed. I want to see. Can I? Fantastic. I think I can. I wanted to obviously first say hello to everyone. Good evening. I wanted to also say thank you so much for inviting us to share our vision and some of our thoughts for the boardwalk this evening. Can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Fantastic. I'm going to run through this presentation. It's going to be about 10 to 15 minutes, at the end of which feel free to ask a few questions. I'll be happy to field those. Okay, so let me see. Let me get started. Doesn't seem to be. Okay, so just a brief introduction, obviously, to myself. My name is Giuseppe Carazzini. The name is very Italian for those of you wondering, and the accent is South African. And I'm joined by my partner in the studio, Alexandra Koinic. We run Paradox. Together, we have over a experience working on projects internationally across a variety of scales. These projects focus a lot on projects in the US, so from towers in Manhattan to multi-residential buildings in Philly that Mark mentioned, to even a sustainable airport in North Carolina. For this project, obviously, we shift our attention a little down south to in the Atlantic, welcoming us obviously to the 32903. In the Atlantic is obviously located along Florida's beautiful Space Coast, and it's important to design not just the boardwalk, but also a project that considers much more the 3,000 or so residents who reside here. In order to do so, we had a little look at the history of the town of in the Atlantic. So something that was quite interesting to us was that it was founded by a Dutch immigrant, Ernest Coverhoven. And what was really a nice story was that the original timber bridge that connected in the Atlantic to the mainland was really a strong lifeline. And this bridge became a symbol of the town's resiliency, where residents often would go over the bridge and repair it with hammers from the trunks of their car as they crossed it. I think something where this resiliency obviously came through with the terrible storm last week as well. A little bit further into the town's identity, right? So understanding a little bit the evolution of the town, architectural styles that come through the town and the public spaces as they've developed, and how this has all contributed to the charm of the vibrant coastal community that we all know today. And here we can see one of Mike's fantastic drone shots showcasing the town below. Through this, we also did a lot of site analysis, right, to understand, again, this 1.6 miles of the boardwalk and how this works with specific environmental factors, so sun and wind, how the boardwalk is currently accessible to the beach, how this deals with specific functions around the boardwalk, so what kinds of activities are currently ongoing there, as well as the current mobility network, so how we have vehicular access, public transportation, and pedestrian routes. When we started to walk along and experience a little bit of what this 1.6 miles of boardwalk was, we realized that it was made up of a number of different qualities and different street sections. We can see here that these different qualities either were places where we had the raised boardwalk going through the park, pathway sections that became much more a part of the parking landscape, beautiful shaded sections underneath the canopy of trees, and longer sections that dealt with the spectacular ocean views. We could see that come to light a little bit in some of the reference imagery provided from the current boardwalk. So as I mentioned, these wonderful places where we have overhang of the trees, some of the existing architectural elements, and then signs, as we can see, of the current boardwalk, which is slightly weathered and in need of a little bit of TLC. So together we want to imagine what the future of the India Atlantic Boardwalk can be. We see this as a place that is full of ambition, right? So somewhere that is diverse, socially active, sustainable, inclusive in terms of access, and an iconic project that is really a welcoming destination where everyone can gather, connect, and enjoy the coastal beauty. In order to do this, we had sort of this macro look at a strategy, how we could start to think about the project. So looking at the current situation, how the landscape currently works a little bit as a barrier, cutting off the town from the seaside, and how we could start to think about stitching the town and the landscape together to create a new resilient and active edge. In order to do this, we looked at a number of different potentials where the boardwalk becomes a dynamic system. So this is adjusting its relationship with the landscape and the needs of the town. So we looked at a few different zones of study. One at the end looking at Nance Park, something looking more at the urban relationships, and something more looking at the relationship with the landscape. So as I mentioned, zone 1, we look more at enhancing the existing. Zone 2, this vibrant town connection, and zone 3, connecting more with the natural landscape. When we look into this, we look at sort of the zone 1, right? So enhancing existing. Nance Park obviously acts as the head of sort of the boardwalk system at the moment. And we can imagine if we start to look at some new ideas for Nance Park, so resurfacing and creating an active edge to Nance Park, we can start to deal with some of the traffic flow and safety concerns along the boundary edge, and then how this can also act as a catalyst for further unique additions that could be something like a grandstand for the volleyball courts or a lookout deck into the landscape. We have a look at this in 3D here, so we have a nice diagram to start to illustrate some of this activity. And so this activated and rejuvenated Nance Park is enhanced with a number of upgrades. And we can see here sort of this new edge that can provide area for markets, facilities for bicycle sharing, and gathering spots for residents. We look to highlight that a little bit more, again, showcasing really the new park edge as, you know, an active place. One can imagine skate park, community gardens, or this fantastic park network that is, as I mentioned, leading to new additions like a lookout deck. We have an image here that also starts to bring this imagination a little bit closer to reality. So we can imagine together where we look at the park, new facilities, new sporting equipment, installations. We look at zone 2, we describe a vibrant town extension. So a very different condition where the boardwalk becomes more of an extension of the urban environment, something where the boardwalk widens out to become a public living room, enhancing the streetscape and providing a backdrop for urban life. So we can see in a couple reference images here how these sort of sustainable streets are made with pocket parks. Public life is really enhanced through bicycle lanes, areas that are wider to allow for public activities such as yoga, art classes outside, maybe somewhere where people start to learn to fly drones. And some of the infrastructure, as we see in the references, that deals with issues like dune retention can also be utilized in a creative public to create dynamic areas such as a tribune or seating going down to the beach. Again, we have a look at sort of what this rejuvenation brings together, a whole lot of different ideas. Again, where local artists could potentially contribute, new seating elements could be added as well as shading. The pocket parks could optimize traffic flow, electric parking spots could potentially be added, all the time with an emphasis on pedestrian safety. And this really starts to create, again, a dynamic environment. We showcase a little bit and highlight how this widened area of the boardwalk potentially could be a great place where fitness enthusiasts can enjoy waterfront workout circuits, or the community could really benefit from this sort of tribune that could offer a versatile space for outdoor performances and public forums. Again, we have another image showcasing sort of where the boardwalk could start to breathe a little bit, become wider, and really become a great place for the community. Another area potential that we've looked at is obviously connecting with nature. And so looking along the boardwalk, we realize there's a number of potential places where the finer grain of the residential areas and the residents could really benefit from accessing the natural landscape. And in order to do this, we can again start to imagine a number of lighter interventions, potentially viewpoints, an upgrade in urban furniture, so smart or solar lighting, as well as different elements that could also promote conservation and education on the local fauna and flora. Again, we have a little bit of a look at how when enjoying these ocean views and learning about the wildlife while taking a peaceful stroll, these access points really enhance the community connection to the landscape. And again, just a little bit of a highlight of these eco trails and the way that people can really start to learn about the natural flora and fauna through interactive installation. And so again, we have another look at a potential image of how we can start to these landscape relationships, so much lighter interventions, much more dealing with the natural landscape, and yeah, also being a place where we're not only thinking about the residents of the community, but also our other local residents, such as the sea turtles. Ultimately, this is the end of the presentation, so something where I would like to say thank you with a final image again from the boardwalk, maybe a balmy evening on the 4th of July, enjoying a drone show over the beautiful ocean of the new India Atlantic boardwalk. Thank you. I would like to open to any questions if you possibly do have.
All right, thank you, Giuseppe. For now, what we'll do, I'll open to council for questions directly to Giuseppe, and then when we start talking about moving forward, we'll have a discussion, then we'll take public comment. So what I'll add is, all those, the examples that, whether it be a skate park or a band shell, whatever, those are just suggestions. If we don't want a skate park, we don't have a skate park. If we don't want a band shell, we don't put a band shell in. If we move forward, we do the detailed schematics, it's all about, we'll have a workshop with the town, and the town will say, hey, we want this, or whatever, So those are just examples that he gave. It's really up to us if we want it. If we want anything, maybe we just want some wide walkways. That's totally up to us. So, Stu, I'll open it to you. Do you have any questions for Giuseppe?
I just have a couple. And first of all, thank you for the very nicely done presentation. Very much appreciate it. You mentioned 1.6 miles. I think it's a little less than that. Could you tell me how you came to 1.6 miles of length?
Sure, I think that was just something that was within the scope of area that we were having a look at. So again, we were looking at that scope of area and potentials of what we could start to think of doing within the boardwalk.
Yeah, I'm not sure the exact length, but I would imagine it's about half of that, because the town itself is only 2 miles long, and quite stretch the whole length of the town. Not a big, just maybe limit some of the options.
Sure.
Florida Department of Environmental Protection is very, very fussy about the beaches, preserving sea turtles and a bunch of other, local Florida issues. Have you looked at any of those, and does it alter your concepts?
100%. So as I mentioned, we want to make a boardwalk that is for everybody, and when we mean everybody, we also mean the local flora and fauna. I think conservation and the sea turtles are something that will be a very important part of the project, and that's something that we will bring on the correct consultants to also deal with taking the project forward.
Last question deals actually with resiliency. Our biggest attraction is also our threat, meaning the Atlantic Ocean, and of course, Atlantic storms. Do you have some thoughts on that, how make a resilient offering?
Sure.
I think that by the way, it's very difficult, and those living in Florida have not figured that out.
Yeah, I think last week was, I think definitely an eye opener towards that, right? Is also something that I was alluding to a little bit in the presentation. So I think there's a lot of fantastic ways that we can also start to think of infrastructure. So things that deal with resiliency in terms of either dune retention, water retention, etc., that are much more than civil projects, but also are projects that create great benefit for the town itself.
Thank you. Again, thank you very much for your presentation.
Of course.
Doug?
Thank you for your presentation, Giuseppe, and your time. Obviously, you guys are 5 hours ahead of us, so it's a bit late there. Appreciate that. Can you tell us a little bit about your experience with these projects in the United States? It's obviously listed out a couple at the beginning.
Sure. As I mentioned, yeah, we work across a variety of different scales and ranges of projects. A lot of our projects are US-based, a lot around housing. So we've done a lot of affordable housing projects. We just did in Vegas. We've done multi-residential, as I mentioned, in Philadelphia. And most recently, we actually did for a group at Ocracoke Island. So they're also an island project dealing with sustainability and resiliency as a framework project as well.
And was that a similar scope or mission in terms of the boardwalk project you just presented?
Yeah, so it was actually a bit of a bigger project in terms of it dealt with the entire infrastructure and planning for the island, so for the whole of Ocracoke Island, and that was looking at implementing sustainable infrastructure.
Thank you.
Brett?
Again, I want to reiterate, thank you for your time, especially considering how late it is where you're located. I had to guess, how many projects have you done where it's been a sensitive ecological environment like we would be working with?
I think every project, a lot of projects deal with different sensibilities. Environmental sensibility obviously plays a large role in a lot of our larger scale projects. So we've done a lot of projects that do deal with these. We also recently did a project in Morica, which is in Montenegro, so here in Europe. But it was a large project that dealt with a river basin. So again, connecting two sides of a city and dealing with the entirety of a river basin that, again, contained a lot of conservation areas. And so, yeah, it's something that we're quite used to dealing with.
Yeah. And I understand that, this is a very large kind of macro overview of potential possibilities. We certainly, we didn't necessarily retain you to get into any specific nuance factors, but I was just wondering, did you have a chance to actually kind of look into the measurements of the area that we're actually working with for some of these proposals? Because I just fear that it's a much more narrow area than you might think.
So no, we do have drawings of the current area. And so those are some of the things that we did take account as well, right? So obviously the sensibility working with the dunes. So something that we did take into account. And yeah, these are areas of study of possibility that we've started to highlight and identify in the project, and things that will then, as we take the project forward, work with is existing to develop that there.
That's it for me for now. Thank you.
Lauren?
Great, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Perfectly.
All right. Thank you again for the presentation. I want to focus a little bit on how, when you present something like this, typically what happens next when you involve the public. This is the first time we're seeing these things, but we're only one small set of the stakeholders here. This are the other people in the room tonight who are very interested, and of course it will trickle out. Tell us a little bit about how you present and what typically happens to facilitate discussion and changes, likes, dislikes. How does the process work so folks can come up with something where they have common ground?
Beautiful question, Lauren. So as well, we've obviously mentioned, this is very early in the project phases, right? So this is a vision starting to just bring together ideas and possibilities of what we can do for the boardwalk, underpinning the research that we've done. Going forward, what we would generally do is create schematic drawing sets. So putting together more information and more data in order to be able to bring together different stakeholders, right? So whether those might be through realms of cost analysis, engineering, and most importantly, the community. Next, we would like the community to be able to utilize our drawing set as a platform to be able to have conversation and to bring forward their ideas as well. So that might be through facilitating things like workshops where people and their ideas can come together in the project as well.
Okay, does that, and I'm hearing two things. Mathematics and other amounts of detail down, that's getting specific with certain concepts. And then you also have this idea of bringing forth conversations, workshops. How do you balance those? Because in my mind, I'm trying to say, the cow doesn't go too far out of the barn with these concepts if you then have workshops that may have very diverse or different sets of ideas. How do you balance that? I'm thinking minded, and really what I want to know is, how do they feel heard and understood, not pushed in, right? Paid to create direction and idea. You've done a lot of research and thought. I get what goes into this type of document. We're not even seeing the research, we're seeing the result side of it. You've got various stakeholders, but how do people feel heard and understood at what point, so they aren't like, well, we're being railroaded to sort of these ideas? And I'm not trying to make a leading question, but I want to get a real feel for how you guide that process. Or is Mark and the town manager guiding that process? What happens?
Sure. So as I mentioned, through the kinds of drawings and the kinds of modeling that we do, we use a technology called BIM, so that's Building Information Modeling. What that is almost like it will become a digital twin of the boardwalk of the town. And it's something that's really adaptable. It contains a lot of data. As I said, it provides the platform and the beginning point from which we can also facilitate conversations around different areas. So as you mentioned, our role is definitely to help to drive the project forward, right? To provide some framework, some guide rails, but at the same time also to allow enough openness for people to come forth and have their say in certain points of the project. And so I think a digital twin, a model like that, is really useful, where the town and people of the town can have comments. And that's something that, as I said, is adaptable, something that can be changed, can be then reviewed by the town before the project actually goes forward. So it's a nice way that we can test ideas, test development, and understand what that means also fiscally for the town. Can also overview in terms of planning. So maybe the project is something that is phased over a longer period of time, where we can also start to decide to work on certain areas of the project and how this all comes together.
So I'm hearing it's sort of like a virtual sticky note almost. People can contribute onto it, so they feel it doesn't have to be filtered. It's almost like when you do web design, you can drop pins and statements on things. Is that an accurate way that the public is involved? Okay, so people can be heard a range of ways, good or bad, sort of have this, and then like anything, it's a forum with conversation. Then someone has to moderate or sort of decide as you continue to engage what's in, what's out, what may be or things that are taken off the table and why. Is that also happen in this model?
100%. And so that will also come through different stakeholder information, right? So that will be, we'll be able to understand what those decisions or ideas might mean fiscally, right? And so maybe a cost consultant will be able to give more, well, this doesn't really work within the budgets of the project, or this does work, and we can start to then shape ideas accordingly.
Okay, so stakeholders, you're not just meaning like people like Stu had mentioned, where you're going to have someone who truly understands the EP's concerns and modeling along with that. Do you also have stakeholders that are people who are seniors that may want, or people that are historic folks in the town, business, commercial sector, tourists, someone differently abled? Do you have individuals that you sort of bring together to collect information, or is it just sort of a free-for-all? I'm trying to understand when you say stakeholders. I get the technical stakeholders. I'm trying to understand how people who represent the stakeholders in your model also are able to feel speaking heard. They're digging into, let's say, the accessibility if they're differently abled.
Yeah.
How would my wheelchair move through spaces and perhaps even onto the beach and enjoy the water? Having a stakeholder who is identified and active, not that you're excluding others, but almost like either the spokesperson. Is that sort of the model you use, or
Yeah, and
how,
so
how do you involve people?
it will incorporate that as well, and we will involve people. We would like to run a number of public workshops as well. So also to give people the opportunity to think with us a little bit, right? So it's not something where we want to be autocratic and drive a boardwalk that exactly comes from, you know, our minds or our, you know, ego or our design. It is something where we would love to have maximum participation of the residents. And so that will be things like public workshops where we'll be able to discuss and work together on a number of different ideas. And so people from all walks of life, so that means accessibility, somebody who's more historically minded, et cetera, able to come along and to contribute to make sure that everybody finds themselves within the Boardwalk project.
Okay, and I've got really one more. How do you get a feel?
If I might, Lauren, sometimes since the project is so complex and long, certain parts, in order to avoid the messiness of everyone coming with their own solution, because they can also be overwhelming, we come with option 1, 2, and 3. Then we choose a direction. People vote on that, and we develop that one further. So it's also narrowing and making the process a little bit shorter. We had that, for example, recently, a public library project, and there were options for certain things because it's a monument, but it needed upgrade. And people were voting for the preferable modification, and that one went through.
Got it. So you're giving options, so it's not the free, but you're allowing folks to home in, and it's, to me, it sounds like an agile process. You iterate as you're getting input, and you're going to pivot, and there are going to be perhaps some bigger pivots, but each time you're learning and you're applying what the stakeholders and the public seems to want to move forward with. Is that
100%.
appropriate?
Yes,
Okay.
correct.
I'm
And then we
understand.
freeze part by part.
Okay, so some parts you may get in these projects typically, we like this isn't debate. This might be areas where there's considerable debate.
100%.
Correct.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Those are my questions at the moment. I appreciate it.
All right. Anything else from you guys? No? The next step is the schematic drawings.
So next step, schematic drawings. Who is the first person that you all would consult with in order to actually put something practical together that's going to comply with all the regulations and environmental concerns and parking of that nature?
So a lot of that we will start to, and as we've sort of started to discuss as well, we will bring a number of consultants on board at various points in that phase. So that will include people like consultants, right, to understand that the project, what budget the project is going towards, as well as someone like an engineer. So as I understand, the town has currently an engineer, so that will obviously be important for certain compliance standards. And then we will also look to bring on specific to deal with conservation things, so things like nesting, etc.
So just to be clear, you know, upfront make sure all the parameters and constraints from which you have to work within before you're actually proposing any sort of grand idea, because, right, because I mean, otherwise we're just going to be spinning our wheels, wasting time and resources.
100%.
Okay.
Yeah, 100%. And so as I mentioned, we will start, so the process sort of us translating a lot of the information that we do have, right, so the current drawings, the current site, into something that is digital. So a platform that everybody can start to use this information to develop from.
Okay. And do you ever make an on-site visit?
Yeah, we would love to come and visit India Atlantic. It looks picturesque. How could I say no?
Thank you.
You guys are good?
I have one other question, Mark, if you
All
don't
right, go
mind,
ahead.
please. Okay, one thing that Mr. Miller brought up that's important to understand is if there's an idea for concepts and consensus and regulatory meeting. If you're trying to meet regulations with designs and you're having consultants work on designs and those end up being some things that get removed because the public is and the stakeholders are not liking that, isn't that doing work before the concept is really solid? Why would you do more hardcore regulatory stuff? It's not that you design something outside of regulations. I'm not getting at that, Brad. I'm trying to understand where you're going. Are we focusing on, hey, these are design that meet every, nit and everything on all that what you do? Or does it more conceptual and then you say, based on this, we will go to those regulations and it may modify it, right? Because regulations sometimes constrain things. What's the order? I'm trying to follow up on Brett's question.
Exactly the second part of what you mentioned there, Lauren. So it is, as you mentioned earlier, an iterative process. We have a very good grasp on IBC of an international building code. As we design, we will utilize this framework to develop these concepts. But of course, as they get developed further, more information is always going to continue to shape the project, right? So if there's specific regulation might shape the project as well, specific information regarding technical aspects might reshape the project slightly as well. If there's specific information regarding budgetary aspects, might reshape the project slightly as well. So again, these are things that will change slightly over time. But we, at the moment, we're at really, really broad strokes, so really broad strokes of ideas and vision, and we will keep narrowing this scope until we eventually hit ground and we have a fantastic boardwalk.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for letting me follow up.
No,
Stu, you have one more?
Well, it's actually two, but one is, I'm sure you're familiar with the American with Disabilities if you've done Philadelphia and in North Carolina. How would you apply those thoughts into a beach community versus a large city or residential area?
I think it's much simpler when we're dealing with a landscape project, right? So when we're dealing with, generally when we're dealing with larger scale buildings, obviously we have a number of concerns when it comes to accessibility and disability. I think when we're dealing with the landscape project, obviously that's going to come in, we deal with accessibility to the boardwalk itself, and then some of the more public functions. So I think things like bathrooms, etc., we will have to also deal with in terms of disability.
And the other question is completely different. You mentioned a number of consultants. Do you contract those consultants, or do we contract the consultants?
I think that's a great question. It will also depend on the consultants, and that's something that we would be happy to discuss further with the city as the project progresses.
Thank you.
All right. So the contract packet is not, well, it's pretty weak, right? And Paul brought up some concerns, as I found out today, that it was not actually the proposed contract paradox. So when I asked Molly to add this to the agenda, she said, well, do we have a contract? And she went through the emails, and I said, yeah, that I think that was it. So Lauren, as you guys will find, sent an email to Molly today, which was presented with some concerns, many of the same concerns that Paul had about the contract, as far as like the date, paying on dates, things like that, deliverables, intellectual property, things like that. So basically, whatever's in the packet that you're looking at, the model agreements do, that's not what we're deciding on right now. So if we're going to move forward, obviously, a contract that would be discussed with Paul and Mike, and we'd go from there. So is there a motion, or would you like me to make a motion? Or Paul, do you have something to say?
I do have a suggestion that some of the parameters that you would want to include would be one, this is non-architectural work.
Mm-hmm.
This is more in the nature of land use planning work. That's number one. Number two, I think you do have budgetary limitations, and whether whether we like it or not. And I would recommend to you that whatever you approve be capped on those budgetary limitations, which the acting manager can advise you of what those are, I think. So.
Okay.
For the purpose of continuing the discussion tonight, I'll make a motion that we approve the contract as proposed. Contract development, sorry.
Okay. Is there a second?
I would have just moved to open it up for public discussion, but we can get to public discussion.
Okay. Stu, do you have any comments on the contract?
I don't have any comments on moving forward with the contract. I'm not sure I understand all the elements that we will be responsible for. So we just need to get to the point of a little more detail.
Okay. In what way? Like,
You know, as Paul says, what are the budget, caps? Who will do the work? What are the deliverables? What's the schedule?
right.
What's the process we're going to follow?
Okay. Doug?
So kind of stepping back just a minute, just to kind of give some context as you were providing at the beginning. So the vision here of the vision of the vision was to get started, to get the ball rolling, right? Because we needed help and get the conversation going. So this is very helpful, getting us at least talking about it, right? And I think from a standpoint, this gives us some good ideas, a good place to go, what we can aspire to from a community perspective. But I think there's also the aspect of not just contractually, how do we manage it in terms of deliverables and the schedule, also just a mapping it out and how does it lay out over the next 2, 3, 5 fiscal years in terms of implementing it. What does that implementation look like in terms of scale? And then also the maintenance aspect of it. How do we keep it? We don't want to buy something brand new and get it nice and then not be able to maintain it because it's an undue burden upon the existing staff and the current budget we have. So I don't feel like we're in a position to move forward with concrete, with any agreement at this point. Not through any fault of a Paradox. I just think as a town, we owe it to, the community as well as to the town staff and ourselves to put forward a good plan of where we have started that process. We've started taking the first step, which is, what do we want to do with it? Do we want to leave it the same? Do we want to incrementally change it? Do we want to start looking for funding sources that would enable us to do more that we can legitimately plan for and pay for out of the town budget, right? I mean, I think that's fundamentally the bottom line is we could figure out a way to pay $200,000 over 4 years to put a couple pocket parks in as a starter point. But if we want to have some more grants, I think that requires us to think bigger, which is a good thing.
Right.
So from my perspective, I think that's where we're at, and I think this is the first step. And that's when we started the process 6 months ago, whatever it was. This is what I was anticipating where we come to the next step, which is fine. So this isn't bad. I think it's the first step in envisioning that next step, similar to how we got with the playground, right? Years ago, when the playground was in the state it was, nobody would ever imagine how it up. And we probably, if we had seen that proposal was and that cost, but we found a way because we rallied around it as a community and we figured out what we wanted and then we made a plan and we executed that plan. So I think we just do the same thing here. It's a little bit bigger, maybe more commas involved, but I think it's a good start.
So what do you want to see from here?
I think we need to, now we've got some material, I think it's important to hear from the community in terms of, not just tonight, but going forward, in terms of what we think that space looks like, at least to get, not necessarily a final design, right, just to get the word out there. And I think we just need to think about what that looks like from a budget standpoint over a 5-year period. Just throwing a number out there, you know. And if we think that there's funding out there, and I am not an expert in funding grants, federal or state, or even private, but if we think that it's a legitimate reason to go set a target that we need to raise, I'm gonna just throw a number out there, don't hold me accountable, $2 million over the next 2 years, thanks, Stu, then in order to make the next step, or we think it's 500,000 with a combination of match grant funding and the town setting aside money like we do when we set aside money to pay forward for a fire truck that, you know, we're gonna get delivery, hopefully. But those are the kind of things I think that we need to kind of incrementally lay out a plan that says things, when we get to here, then we can actually implement. So we want to be thoughtful on how we do that and set milestones and markers so that we can, you know, it's not 10 years out because I don't think anybody would be interested. It will lose steam. So it's something that's within the next 24 months that if we think we can go do something in the next 6 months, let's see if we can do something in the next year to 2 years. What does that look like? Is it a couple pocket parks, or is it something much bigger? And then maybe we can find champions either on the community or businesses or whatever to help us with that activity. That's my opinion.
Okay.
You know, I feel similar to Doug. I think this is a great point. It's a great first step. I want to thank you, Mark, for your leadership and you know, bringing this forward. This actually gives us something, you know what I mean, tangible that we can point to and say, okay, this is what we're talking about. This is when we say, you know, a boardwalk project. I think a lot of people, great, but you know, what are you talking about? What's the scope? What's the extent of it? What are the possibilities? Now we have a baseline. Know, you know, what the possibilities are. So I think this is a great starting point. I really want to get the public's input during public comment, not during side conversations that are going on that I can't hear. So I think that's really crucial, is getting everyone's input so we could feel as a town as a whole the direction we want to go with this. And then, following on what Doug said, just kind of lining up funding a little bit better. And then personally, I would honestly like to have, you know, really provide the playing field to maybe we go forward with Paradox. I really would like to kind of define the playing field a little bit better. Like, these are, you know, environmental issues that we know from day one. These are the parking issues we know from day one. Setback issues, like, just so that we don't have to like get some beautiful idea and then be like, all right, 90% of it's not going to work, and we just wasted time and money, or at least time. So I think that would be helpful too. And we can do that, like, we're kind of on our own, provide it to them up front. But I think this is a great starting point. I thank you, Paradox. What you all done's great. By no means does this mean we at least from my perspective, wouldn't go forward with you. Just, you know, we got to crawl before we walk, and we're at the very beginning stage. And I want to thank you, Mark, for bringing this forward, because this is what it requires in order for us to get where we want to go.
Lauren.
I outlined my concerns. I don't have to go over them now. You've got them, I think, because you didn't have the contract. I think that at this point, it's not actually about the schematic plan, and I don't want to tell the professionals yes or no, but let me tell you what I think's going to happen or need to happen, or typically when I've been involved with larger projects where you need to first gain consensus, is someone is paid to facilitate discussion who's a professional knowing what they're doing with a clear process, because it can get messy, and a wave of angry emails or emails with dissenting opinions still have to be shepherded, stewarded, and truly considered, whether they're positive or negative, in a very objective, open way. And that's not us. The five of us aren't experts at this. We haven't done this before. You're appropriately treading new ground with professionals, and Mark and the town manager. That's why you brought them on. So I'd like to see a contract related to what they think is best, but facilitating discussion with a clear process. And I don't agree that numbers need to be discussed at time because we don't even know what's going to fly. You can put numbers as you want against anything, but having an idea of the scope of work when you don't have the scope of the work, numbers just scare people away because what if you start to scope something that gets public feedback from stakeholders and pares it down very quickly? A number that may have been scary and actually frustrated people has nothing to do with the size of the project as it is. So I don't believe that funding numbers come out of the process, I believe, unless Paradox wants to say, hey, Lauren, you don't understand well enough, and they can probably talk to where that happens. But really, the goal is to have a contract that facilitates economically, professionally, and very holistically involving people to see if the idea has any enthusiasm and consensus. Because that's what you're facilitating, I think, to figure out as the next service. So I may be totally wrong. I'll be quiet there. Giuseppe, do you have any, and if you've got push, if I'm wrong, and tell me that I'm wrong, that that's not what you'd put into the initial contract, please.
No, Lauren, I think you touched on a number of interesting points, and you are very correct. So a lot of the initial work that we will do is to facilitate public discourse, right? So I think that that is a very important entry point into the project. And then some of the other council members mentioned that, you know, this is something where the city is learning to a little bit crawl with this project, right, move forward. And that's something where, yeah, we would like to be able to help to hold the hand, one might say, of the city to also guide through this, right? So to be able to facilitate these discussions and back this up with the drawing and the modeling, etc., the information that's going to be able to drive the project as well. And that will also be useful for a number of different aspects. So whether that goes out to look for various funding. So we've already had a look at a couple different grants that the city could apply for. And that will include specific aspects in the project, right? So that might having a certain amount of electric parking, because that will allow us to apply for certain grants that are going to be able to help to facilitate the project. Certain aspects around resiliency, also in the state of Florida, can get us certain funding and certain grants, right, for the project. And so those are also bits and pieces of information that we would like to feed in along with the public discourse to start to shape where the project does go.
Lauren, is that it?
That's it, sir.
All right. One consideration, and this is no means a method to jam it down anybody's throat, but the state appropriations deadline is in January. So if we're looking for appropriations, whether either be for even just the planning phase, we need to be moving forward with that if we want to move forward with seeking appropriations. So, all right, public comment. We have Pam. Are you looking to talk about this? Okay.
Say my name. You know my name now. Yeah, it's on the card, right? So I put my comments on notes, so I'll try and be brief. So first, again, I think Brett said, thanks, Mark. It's your heart's in the right place, without a doubt. But I got other concerns. I agree 110%, Doug, with everything you said. Well thought out and good approach. So there's a few things I'm going to try and highlight as quick as I can, and if I go over any bit, hopefully give me a little bit of leniency. So spending $120,000 on a design phase right now with no insight on what the funding, to me, seems excessive, right? What's the plan? What's the vision? And we're not sure. Has this been to an open meeting at Parks and Rec? Other than talking to Parks and Rec, have they actually held this?
Not yet, no.
Okay.
Be part of
so you guys are looking to go approve a design, spend money before Parks and Rec has even seen it, right? That's broken. Something to think about. So a couple of people have signed up to, and when you ran, and you said you were good stewards of money, good stewards of the town's money. So, and I would look at this, if you let this contract out at this point, as I would say, you're not good stewards. If to release of money, something of this size at this point, for a variety of reasons, and no disrespect, Giuseppe, and I'm sorry, I forgot your name, ma'am, letting out a $120,000 contract to a foreign entity, going out for bid, how many people, Lauren, responded to this from the U.S.?
Lauren.
Did you do this, Lauren? How many local or or a Florida-based company responding to Upworks?
I don't remember exactly of all the applicants that there were several in the United States. There
Okay.
were
So
several.
Upworks is not traditionally how you would source something like this. I mean, it's regardless. I think this should go out for bid. After it's been through public reviews in Parks and Rec. To let this contract out without going for bid and without seeing this, I think is a mistake. And Paul, I meant, and we spoke about it, you didn't think we had to go for bid, but good stewards of our money would put this out for bid, see other concepts, and see how they would, get the experts. So you guys are gonna hire, give these guys funding, and they're gonna hire experts from the US with that money, right? So basically, they're gonna overseas manage the experts that they're gonna hire locally to provide the expertise, as Doug mentioned, to do the such. So that doesn't make sense to me. You also mentioned that the funding would be like the fire truck, right? You could have matching grants. It's not like the fire truck, right? You're going to the only funding that can be used is Enterprise 1 and Enterprise 2. Enterprise 1 and Enterprise 2 sole income comes from parking, it comes from stickers, and it comes from tickets, right? So the $120,000 you have in the Enterprise 1 fund or Enterprise 2, whichever it is a result of those increased parking rates, right? You're not using tax dollars. You can't use tax dollars for this. So in order to come up with, this is a $5 plus $10 million project you're looking at. So if you had to any kind of matching, the only way you can match that money is parking revenue or donations. So that's a challenge. It's not the same as the fire truck. You also have Tax Watch Florida. If you're going to go out for bids for some of these grants, as you like other stuff, like we did for Mikey Goodwin, this is going to be a red flag. It's going to get red flagged. It's not going to be Tax Watch based on my 17 years of experience. They didn't support Mikey Goodwin. We got that money for two reasons. One, we had Debbie Mayfield pushing it. We had Jason pushing it right to Governor DeSantis. This is extreme. When you're looking for millions of dollars, it's going to be a red flag, and that's going to happen. So why do the $120,000 design at this point? Have a concept. You need a draft concept of what it is. Start discuss, get the public input, build a better plan, and then go back to this thing. Go out for bid with the concepts and look forward that way. And again, I heard we've already paid you guys. How much have you received from us to date?
I believe it's 6,500 somewhere in there.
6,500, that's it?
Giuseppe, do you remember the original contract?
No, I don't remember exactly, but I mean, it was something around there. It was to put together some initial ideas.
Okay.
But
So-
this is something, that obviously we've been discussing
and
further
then-
than that as well.
Thank you. My last comment, I appreciate the overrun here, is I understand that contract that they have in the agenda is after a model contract. That is a bad contract, right? You don't do milestone-based payments based on time, right? So you get 6 milestone payments to get to $120,000 based on times on a calendar. It should be 10% design, 20% design. It should be design reviews, product, and you don't have a definitive product that they're delivering, right? You live this all the time. That doesn't make sense. So that model contract is not even close to what it should be. All right, thank you.
The model contract was just something that we put together also to help the city to understand, what a project like this looks like going forward. It was not meant to be a specific contract for this.
All right, thank you.
I have one quick comment, just for Giuseppe's knowledge. The Parks and Rec that Dave referred to is town committees of citizens. And that's their responsibilities to look at projects and provide input as to what goes into the air parks and recreational activities. And it's an advisory committee, so it advises the council.
Carrie?
Mr. Mayor. Carrie Foy, 235 Wayne Avenue. I'm a little disappointed that I feel like we're cart before the horse. I'm on the Budget and Finance Committee. I know we'll have the money for this. And former Mayor Burke spoke of the enterprise funds. I know where the money will come from, and it'll come from the citizens. So hence my disappointment. This thought process going on since the beginning of the year. What I would like to have seen is town input, ideas come together, and then we can go to a company or some
Planner.
plans, right, to come up with want. A vibrant boardwalk, this is what I heard tonight, a vibrant boardwalk that's open to everyone and the residents. It should be the opposite. It should be something that the residents want, and then if the other people from outside of our town can come and enjoy it, then good. But I think it should be based on what the residents want, what the residents input. We could have had all this time, we could have been having workshops, and we could have been discussing it and talking about it, but now we're going to be given option 1, 2, and 3, which was what Ms. Miller said, that we'll have limited so they don't get overwhelmed with ideas. We should have the idea first and then go with someone. And that was my only thought about that. And then funding, I think funding is a problem. So I think maybe we should try to get the funding, and this is probably a 3 to 5 year project. It's going to be at least $5 million. I think it might be more than that. I think it's going to be about $5 million. That's what my guess is, if, something that we want to keep. I know that with our heritage committee, we laud that we have a, sleep bedroom community, and I think we kind of want to keep it that way. We don't want it to look like Venice Beach or Miami Beach. We want to keep that concept of having, kind of like our sleepy town, and I hope we can do that. Thank you.
Were you talking about this? Okay. Okay. All right. Any other public comment? Sure.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. 205 South Miramar just recently acquired boardwalk property. Giuseppe, good morning to you. Where are you located at?
Good morning. We are currently in Rotterdam, the Netherlands. I'm not sure if you're familiar.
Oh, yes. Very beautiful place. Very beautiful place.
Thank you very much.
Listen, I want to thank you. I do thank the mayor. I think the mission is great. I think we all need to kind of get along, make this happen one day. I understand it's conceptual. Conceptual is just the beginning, a start. It doesn't mean this, doesn't mean that. And it's just a start to figure out what to do, guys. And I think we're on the right track. Another thing that I believe in, don't reinvent the wheel. Go down or up the street and go find other towns that are successful and whatever they've done, whether it's pavers, streetscapes. And one other important thing I must say is, parking. Where's the parking? I mean, this is a gigantic park, and, how many spots do we have in the park? Half the spots are sold to, residents, right? And they're sold to local business employees. I guess they can buy spots. Where do we park? So I think we have to think of the parking. It needs a structure. Nance Park actually will need a parking garage. Without the parking garage, you cannot do this. It will not work. You will have nothing but a traffic jam. And people will park all in the residences' lawns, up and down blocks and blocks. There'll just be people parking on people's lawns. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? Public comment? No? All right. So where do you guys want to move from here? What was your motion?
Well, I mean, the motion was to move to approve the contract. That was I would vote.
It's really to open up discussion.
It was really open up discussion.
Right,
amongst
right.
Council and the residents. That was the goal. We can retract, I suppose. I don't envision that we're not gonna make, well, I'm just gonna say we, because I'm speaking for myself. So we would have to, or we could retract it. I don't believe we have support to move forward written, and I know it's a example contract either way.
So how should we move forward, do you think?
Paul, do I need to make a motion? Do we need to take a vote, or do we just, we don't want to I don't think there's any value in tabling the motion.
I think if everybody is in agreement, you can simply withdraw your motion.
Okay. So, is there any objection from the council with withdrawing the motion? As
No objection.
What'd you say?
No.
no, he said no.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So I think what I would advise for the council would be that we take what we've heard tonight. I don't know when Mike Casey's going to be back available. I know he's down with COVID pretty bad. So we need, because of sunshine, we're not able to talk amongst ourselves on these types of things, so it becomes somewhat problematic.
We're going to have a workshop, though.
We could have a workshop, an advertised workshop. We have the new council coming in December, so we have that limitation. So I think there's some discussion that we need to have about what are the limitations. I think I would like to understand the fiscal limitations with regards to the enterprise fund as it relates to the complexities of both it being restricted to enterprise and other external funding sources that are or not eligible for use there. I don't have a good appreciation. I understand the enterprise fund, how it works, but what the restrictions are with extra funds beyond that, either from the state or otherwise. Obviously, a private donation is a private donation, but that's neither here nor there. So I think it behoove us to understand kind of the guardrails there, guidelines, if you want to call it, of what the limitations are practically speaking, so that we can start to lay out a plan. And then I think it is important for us to target specific things with workshops with Parks and Rec. I think that's important to get them engaged. Dave brought up a good point there. And start to break the project down into bite-sized chunks, and we can engage with Paradox as appropriate during that process.
Okay.
My recommendation.
I'd like to follow up on one of the points. So, in regard to the funding, what level of information or like documentation or movement do we need to have in order to actually seek an appropriation?
They say shovel ready, but shovel ready doesn't mean plans in hand. That's more of a question for Jason, who's not with us tonight. He's down south.
So just good politicking, essentially, huh?
No.
Yeah.
Mark?
Yeah.
I disagree that it has to be shovel-ready. Mike Herodopoulos, as what is acting as our lobbyist, had given you a form, given us a form, very clear. There are multiple stages. It's a short form. Brett, something if you don't have, maybe Molly or one of us could forward it to you. I think there was a range of things that do not have to be shovel-ready, including a design and plan area, and it's not a very complicated form that he provided from other ones from our sister towns that have successfully been accepted, and you'd be surprised at, while it's certainly forethought goes into it, it is not something that is exhaustive. I'd encourage you to reach out directly to Mr. Steele or Mr. Herodopoulos. I know Mr. Herodopoulos is busy campaigning, but they can answer that very concisely. He walked me through it. It's a very quick process to understand the form.
Absolutely. From your general understanding, Lauren, do you think that we could potentially try to make a move to seek an appropriation this coming year for preliminary stage that we're at right now?
I think you're in a design phase, and that's one of it. And remember, the two other areas that when Mr. Herodopoulos addressed the council, he talked about was timing. Mark already brought that up tonight. And also there are areas that are valuable. Giuseppe actually brought them up about resiliency, et cetera. There are other areas that specifically are more successful for appropriations than others. Again, Jason Steele, Mike Herodopoulos, if anything has changed, can guide you exactly for those success factors. I cannot speak with confidence
I understand.
to that. I would ask. But they'll tell you. So I think you can pick your marks. You really got to ask yourself, Brett, is who's quarterbacking the project? Because someone's got to steward, shepherd, and make the through, right? That's the big deal. Do you hire someone, or do you home grow it yourself? Do you put it off to the Parks and Rec? Council members step up. Doug was asking all the big questions. When you say we, I wanted to say, all right, Doug, who do you mean by we? which one's the lead project manager?
I mean, is it fair to say? I think it's you, Mark, right? Mm-hmm. You're willing to, yeah, absolutely. So, I do want to make just one comment in the sense that, I would hope that nobody in the audience feels disappointed about where we're at. This is a beginning. This is what this is. This is civil discourse. This is we're figuring it out as we go, right? we didn't make any sort of final vote, and, not taking some sort of futile path. So this is the beginning. So let's all work together and, put our input in, head in the right direction.
Cool.
I think what I would like to see us do, we have this now on YouTube, or we will in a day or so. Okay, it's on right now. The next Parks and Rec meeting is probably in a couple weeks. I'm not sure,
I can look.
but let's ask Parks and Rec if we can add this to their agenda to view the initial concept
It's next Friday.
that Paradox is presenting, and get their impact input, and then go to a public workshop with it. Which will kind of give it a jump start.
So we'll hold a public workshop after Parks and Rec.
That would be my advice.
Okay.
And then simultaneously look into the phases of appropriations that we can seek for while we're at, where we're at right now.
That's a different path, though.
Right. No, but it can
Yeah, exactly.
parallel.
Giuseppe, you have anything in closing?
No, I think it was obviously wonderful to be part of this discourse tonight. I think, there's a number of things that you have brought forward, things that we would also like to be part of. So I think there's enough discussions that you've proposed, right? So with Parks and Recs and with community workshops. I don't think that these things are too premature, but maybe are a little bit premature in discussion. And as I said, sort of things that we would like to provide our assistance in how to facilitate. Other than that, no. I think it was wonderful being able to share a little bit of the vision with you, and we look forward to being able to continue together to create a fantastic boardwalk where memories are made and the community can come together.
All right. Thank you, Giuseppe.
Thank you.
Be in touch.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much.
All right. See ya.
Yeah, it's very late for them.
All right. All right, moving on. Public comment for non-agenda items. With Pam?
Take a 2-minute break.
Pam
Just take a
Dunn,
2-minute.
330 Indy Atlantic, Florida. On behalf of Garden Club by the Sea, I want to invite everyone to our 4th Veterans Day ceremony on Monday, November 11th at 10 a.m. at Lily Park. And I hope everybody can come. Thank you.
Thank you.
One question, Pam. Are we going to get a helicopter flyover this year?
That's up to you, Doug.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, if you can.
Yeah, our neighbor on the. Any other public comment, non-agenda item? Yeah, Carrie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Carrie Foy, 235 Wayne Avenue. As I walk across the crosswalk where ABC is every day, rain or shine, I've been noticing the disarray of the Rotary Pavilion, and it's just worse and worse and worse. And so I took some pictures, reached out to a personal friend that was a Rotary member in the Suntree area who put me in contact with the president-elect of the Rotary. So we reached out and said, hey, this is your pavilion, can you help us with some repairs? So I'm sorry that Mike Casey's not here tonight. So he said that they went and looked at the pavilion and it was beyond our club's ability to do repairs. So we need to discuss in more detail what the town would like help with. Thanks for reaching out, blah, blah, blah. So that was a kind of a, we're not going to, fix it what needs to be fixed. So what I see is it's basically where the homeless people hang out, and it's literally there at the park. So what one of my suggestions would be was, unless it is a sanctioned rented function, cut the power, because there's a power outlet there. And they are that's what they use, why they hang out there all day. Our police department does an excellent job of trespassing the people that should not be there or overstay or commit a crime. Joe knows when our bathrooms were being, this makes me so sad, when our bathrooms were being fixed, repaired, and we had the portalets, we had one of the homeless people defecate on the boardwalk right there at number 1. He fixed it. I talked to him immediately because they were working on the shower, and they had it taken care of immediately, but it was awful, right?
I think it was number 2.
It was
Sorry.
number 2.
Bad
right.
joke.
So it was really sad. So my suggestion would be cut the power unless someone's renting it, and maybe that can discourage, some of that behavior.
Joe, do you have any input?
Yes, we are going to shut the power off. We're going to have a timer
Okay,
that will be done.
thank you. I
Soon.
appreciate that. I mean, that's a start. So, but kudos to our police department because they do, when they can, they have rights, and they should, but they do a great job of trespassing when they can. So that's something that I think maybe we can talk about. Maybe it could be in a future agenda item is doing something with that pavilion, either consider tear down, extend the, maybe part of the new boardwalk thing. 4, by the way.
Cool.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other agenda items? All right. Public announcements. There are open on the following boards and committees: Budget and Finance, Civil Service, Code Enforcement, Heritage Committee, and Pension Board for the general employees. All will be closed November 11th for Veterans Day, and Sharing Indialantic Memories, hosted by the Indialantic Heritage Committee, November 17th, 2024, from 2 p.m. until 4 at Indialantic Town Hall. Consent agenda. Is there a motion on the consent agenda?
Accept the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
All in favor of approving the consent agenda as presented, say aye.
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 Opposed? All opposed? All right. There are no ordinances and public hearings. So unfinished business. Code review from Brett.
I'm punting to December. Well, one, I had a whole packet, and I was going to go over what I could today. Grabbed the wrong notebook when rushing out of the office, so I don't have materials. But there are certain issues in there that are kind of larger, and I realize since I'm finally coming around to this at the end of this year, it makes more sense to bring it up in December with our 2 new council members, because we would be discussing getting to a vote, and then they'd be on, and then we'd have to kind of start that process over again. So it just makes sense to start it in December. I apologize, Stu and Lauren. You obviously can still be part of the process. So punting that till December.
All right. New business. Approve resolution 01, 2025, addressing town-owned property held in fee simple title that is available for use as affordable housing. Paul, this is just administrative, right?
Correct. I will move to accept. What's the number?
Number 1,
125.
first one
Oh,
in
no, I
here.
got the wrong line. Okay.
Is there a second?
I will second.
Any comments, discussion?
There is no
No, I have it.
There's no land in the Atlantic that is suitable for development. That's essentially what it states in terms of what the town holds, a simple title.
Paul, do you have any input?
It's a requirement from
No.
the state every 3 years that we have a resolution basically stating what
Right.
properties we have and if we use them for housing and like urban development type of thing. But as you said, we have no property available, but we state that in a resolution.
Okay. Public comment? None? All right, all in favor of approving Resolution 1, 2025, addressing town-owned property held in fee simple title that is available for use as affordable housing, say aye.
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 All opposed? All right, unanimous. All right, item number 2, discuss rezoning of 1501 South Miramar Avenue, 53 Tampa Avenue, and 63 Tampa Avenue. Brett?
Yes. So, grabbing the wrong notebook, I don't have certain materials that I was going to hand out to those that can access it. And are we able to bring up the town zoning map on the overhead screens? That would be extremely helpful if we could.
I know exactly where it is.
Yeah, I figured. anyone that lives kind of on the south end of town that uses the Tampa Avenue beach access is concerns. That's the beach access that I use. Right at that location is where the tourist zoning district ends, and then it goes back to R1. I think it's R1A, so it's residential, and that finishes the last. And this is, excuse me, on the east side of A1A on the beach side in the ocean. And so then it goes, you know, for just a single-family residential until we hit Melbourne Beach. At the
Molly's
Tampa,
pulling it up.
great, yeah, I think.
Molly, if you want, my screen, you can switch to my screen if you want. I have the section up, like.
It's up there now.
Great.
Zoom in.
Yeah, keep going up. Bring it. There we go.
Right where the
All
red
right,
is.
so perfect. As everyone can see, yeah, it's right there where the red changes to the orange, I guess.
Correct.
So I always assumed, so if you go to the Tampa Ave beach access, and there are these 3 properties to the side of that beach access. A 2-story property, and then these 2 kind of like looking single, like just these single 2 little buildings that I always thought were the same. Anyways, if you look at it, if you just look at the actual use, like how the properties look and what you think the actual use would be, and the way the tourist district is, I never really looked at it that closely. I had always thought that they were the last properties that were in the tourist district. They do not really appear like a traditional single-family home, how it goes thereafter to the south. And because at that line right there, just to the north, is Tuckaway Shores. And so I just always thought they were the last properties that were tourist. Turns out they're not. They're the first ones that are R1A. And so it's right here. Y'all can see right there. And so there's the 2-story ones right here. Believe it or not, this little here is actually a lot, and this one is, and these are where those like Mediterranean-looking homes are. So again, just based on the use of how those properties look, I would deem them to be part of the tourist district. It doesn't really make sense to me that they would be restricted to single family. She was brought up to me, and apparently, one of the property owners actually currently has a application in to have the property rezoned. It's the one closer to A1A. That's the 2-story building. The owner has done an amazing job of improving the property since, I think, 2017, 2018. And when I found out that she has a rezoning application in, I kind of looked into the issue and discovered that, well, the town council has the ability to bring forward this issue. And to me, it doesn't make sense to, say her application's approved, to have hers become, just that one property, become part of the tourist district, but then the other 2 properties, one of them, which is adjoining a lot, and they're just to the east, be single family. It makes more sense, practically, for all of them, in my view, just to be the last section of the tourist district. Again, I encourage you to go there, look at the use. Like, I feel like most people will agree. And then to my understanding, I don't think any of the other property owners, neighboring property owners, have any issue with all of them being rezoned for tourist. So my proposal is that, as opposed to there being a consideration about just that one property being rezoned for the tourist district, that whole little section, so it would just be right here is the last ones that are tourist, and then it continues single family.
I don't have an issue with that on the grand scheme of things, or in the grand scale of things. I guess my question to both the lawyer on staff and the other lawyer on staff Does this, especially in real estate, does it possibly open up Pandora's box and lead to other people more on the west side looking to rezone?
Personally, me, I don't think so. The look at the properties and what they, their highest best use, what they use. I mean, they are clearly distinguishable from the rest of the single-family homes. But you're making the argument for on the west side. I would say no, because I mean, the whole tourist district, right, already is strictly on the east side. These are neighboring properties to the tourist district. That area is almost kind of, because beach access, it's almost, I don't want to say commercial, but you know what I mean. It falls certainly as far as the use more within the tourist zone. So I believe that there are distinguishing features. Of course, there's always going to be some lawyer that tries to make some argument. You never know the judge you get, how that's going to work. But I believe that from my perspective, the arguments are in our favor, that we wouldn't necessarily be setting a precedent upon which anybody else could then, try to seek a similar rezoning.
Paul, agree, disagree?
A couple of things for consideration. First of all, the process for this would be for it to go to zoning and planning for public hearing, and then it comes to town council. It will require adoption of an ordinance, so you'll see it twice and at least once for a public hearing. Second factor is that there's two considerations, and that is you're talking about expanding the tourist zoning district. Obviously, that means all of the traditional tourist uses, including vacation rentals. And that's the only district in the town where vacation rentals are permitted. And you're talking about expanding it to the south of Tampa Avenue, which certainly that's well within your prerogative to do that if you so choose. I would tell you that the tourist district as a whole, the tourist zoning district, for comprehensive planning purposes is basically in a high density, permits high density. This particular property, these properties rather, on the south side of Tampa are under your comprehensive plan are low density. So arguably, if you extend the tourist zoning to the south of Tampa Avenue and you kept it low density, that would be somewhat of a block for further expansion of the use into something that would be possibly less desirable. The other point I would point out to you too, and that is that it's not an ironclad rule, but generally there is case law in Florida that street right-of-ways are seen as a logical point of demarcation between zoning districts, and obviously you'd be deviating from that concept. Can you deviate from that concept legally? Yes, you can. Should you? That's a policy decision for you as council members to make that determination.
If I may, I'd like to follow up on the comprehensive plan aspect, because I did not check into that. You're saying that specific property, is it mapped comprehensive plan as far as what low density is?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a land use map in the comprehensive plan, and south of Tampa is comprehensively land use planned as low density residential.
Okay, and yeah, it probably takes an act of God to revise the comprehensive plan in that regard, huh?
Well, in this case, you
Yeah.
all are God.
Yeah, well, I agree. But just because, I mean, from, again, a practical standpoint, there are other areas in the tourist district that are, you know, the same density as those units. I mean, there's plenty of two-story kind of apartment condos just to the north on Wavecrest in that area, townhomes, that I would say, again, just from a practical standpoint, the density is actually the same, I would argue. But yeah, I think that, to me, that's the only potential legitimate hurdle, I would think. I think everything else is probably.
Another point I'd make to you, and that is that the timing on this is probably not to our advantage. As you know, our longtime planner, Jim LaRue, has retired. And I know before he went in the hospital, the manager was looking at trying to find somebody else to act as a planner for the town. He had some various firms that he was looking at. How he got, I don't know. So my point is, all right, so this goes forward. The next step would be for it to go to zoning and planning, public hearing. There's no planner to do an impact study for the board. So there will be at some point, but
We could still vote on sending it to zoning and planning. It's just contingent upon the next zoning and meeting, which could be months.
well, let me ask, has somebody actually filed a formal application on this?
Yes.
There is an application, well, then it's not a matter of voting on whether to send it, that's the process.
Well, but that's for that individual property, and that's why my proposal is for the whole strip.
Okay, yeah.
1501 South Miramar Avenue has a rezoning application in. And that I believe has been sent and reviewed by the previous town planner.
Question of order, if zoning and planning makes a determination that they recommend a rezone, it then comes to the council to have to vote
Correct.
on it.
And if they don't,
Then we,
And even if they recommend against it, it still comes to the council.
Yeah, theirs is just an advisory position, right?
I was just curious.
It's,
Confirm the process rather.
yeah, it's considered to have great weight, but it's not,
Fine.
it's not the final song of the fat lady, if you will.
Doug, you have any comments?
I don't see a compelling reason to change the street. I mean, you're Googling it in legal terms, but street boundary reserve is the reason, and I'm reading between the lines, no pun intended. That's why the R3 zone is south of Tampa Ave, and the tourist zone is north of it. I'm surprised Mr. Dijon,
Right.
he has the adjacent property just south, if he had an opinion on the matter. Not that would change my opinion on the matter. Molly, if you be so kind as to end of the tourist zone. I believe it's commercial and tourist and park, but I mean, again, it's contiguous across, you know, the however long I call the zone, Stu. Up to Watson. So there's a break and it's park, and then it's.
Yeah, I would
tourist.
comment that we have several spots where the zoning changes,
Yeah, I understand.
not based upon a street.
No, you can clearly see that the color has changed, not based on street demarcations. But I just don't see a compelling reason to make the change. I haven't seen the application, so I'm not privy to that information. I'm not asking to see it tonight, but that's my opinion. How it's currently constructed on it is how it's currently constructed. If you live in the tourist zone and you have a piece of property and you want to build a one-story single-family home, that's your prerogative. Or you can also story set of condos, that's your prerogative. But
Stu?
I'd like to hear the results of the zoning and planning meetings. I would like to see it go forward to that point. Very rarely, I can only think of one instance where we didn't agree with zoning and planning in the last 10, 15 years.
Starbucks.
I don't know how they
I think they voted against.
on a few times, I'm not sure.
That's true. Lauren, do you have any comments?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I too wrote down here as taking my personal notes, I'd like to see it to go before zoning and planning for that particular property. This gives a chance for the other property owners to make some decisions if they want to put in an application. And I also do about neighbors of those properties, right? Because it's not just the people who will be in the tourist zone. You now have one set of, you have a set of properties that are now closer, potentially. And I think that it should follow. I understand why Brett's looking at it. I get that he's looking holistically and this is his superpower. But I think I'd rather see it go through what I'd call the regular process. And I do, let's be considered, Brett and Paul, to go through. And let's say zoning and planning brings it through and it passes. I'm hypothetical. Is this considered a spot zoning change, or what is this called or perceived as if it were to happen?
I wouldn't judge it to be a case of spot zoning, and the reason is because the property to the north, on the other side of Tampa, is simply being extended, and it's all part of that district. Therefore, it really wouldn't be spot zoning. It's simply an extension of an existing district.
I agree with
Brett,
Paul.
do you see it?
Yeah, I see it that way.
And
I mean, when you see the zoning district, it's east of A1A to the ocean, extending, all the way south. It's just an extension of that.
I want to be on that because spot zoning opens up and a whole issue, and Councilmember Wright was sort of going there, is looking at other areas. We want to be very, very careful not to do that, or if it's ever brought before us, I personally would urge a very high hurdle, very, very high hurdle if that were ever considered. So I think the normal flow is how I'd like to see it, unless, Brett, you have other super compelling reason you think it must be decided without moving through.
Sorry if I, led you to believe any different. No, my proposal is that, the council recommend that the entire strip follow the process and go to zoning and planning, as opposed to just having, the one parcel that has the application. I think that might make more sense to zoning and planning as well, to actually see the entire strip go before them, as opposed to the one parcel.
Have you suggested to the other property owners, perhaps they at the same time coordinate with applications, and that would see whether they're motivated to do so?
No, I haven't had any discussions with property owners.
Okay, so I'm still inclined to allow the process to go through individually as it is moving already.
I have something quick to add. There's actually quite a steep application fee for the rezoning, and it's actually to cover costs of the town. And we will incur that cost on 53 and 63 Tampa Avenue if it's not done at the owner's request. We have, legal fees. Even though the town planners looked at South Miramar, they're also going to have to look at 53 and 63 Tampa Avenue. We'll have Paul's fees for the meetings and everything like that. So there is generally a fee that is recouped if they apply.
I believe it's in
something
the
to consider.
3,000 range, somewhere in there, is that right?
I believe so, 3,000.
Yeah, this would just essentially be piggybacking off of a current application, so I don't know that we would actually have really that much more of incurred cost. It would probably be rather negligible, unless there's any sort of like publishing requirements and such.
Well, I believe the town planner would still have to review those properties in of themselves, and they would still require legal ads for each property.
Individually.
Yeah, I think the ads would be where it is. I would imagine the town planner looking at it, having already made one analysis, it wouldn't be that much.
It would be a different town planner, though, because we no longer have that town planner.
Well, if you want the fees to be high, Molly, the fees will be high, okay?
I'm sorry, I'm a realist. I'm going to turn off my microphone.
Okay. Anything else? Brett?
No, I just move that we, the entire parcel for consideration to zoning and planning. Or not, I shouldn't say the entire strip, 3 parcels.
Is there a second? Stu, you want to second it?
I would agree with Brett. I'll second that.
Public comment.
Pam Dunn, 330 Tampa Avenue. If this happened, what would happen to the parking spaces? Where would that go? Because right now, it's golf carts or permitted parking. What would happen in the area?
Nothing would change as far as the parking.
Would it, okay.
Yeah, it's just the property, so the properties
Right,
would
but
stay
they
the
don't
same.
really, if it became a Airbnb or whatever, there are no parking spaces. Would you use,
The property that currently has an application, all that green space
Yeah, 'cause
up
they
to
usually
A1A,
park on the grass.
that's theirs.
Yeah.
The property owner owns all of that.
right, but they park, the cars are on the grass, they're not in the parking lot,
Right, so they would continue to stay in the same places.
in the grass.
Yeah,
Okay.
yep.
Greg?
Greg Harrigan, 120 Orlando. So when I bought my house in Orlando, it was, I guess, 15 years ago, I saw Tampa as a residential crossover. And I think the fact that the parking the way it is a testament to that. And the property that is next door to that has really their own way access to the beach. So it really does serve, I think, the residents primarily. And when I look at the comprehensive plan again for the residents, not for the tourists, right? We had this conversation like a half an hour ago. I struggle with just redrawing the comprehensive plan, and it is redrawing it. I mean, you can move lines on a map, but fundamentally, a decision was made. To me, if you're gonna go through this process, you have to go through the process of the comprehensive plan and see if it meets all of those things, right? So go to zoning and planning. But I am strongly against it because that's crossover. That's been my place. And this is the encroachment of condos on A1A, right? Every time one gets mowed down, they build a condo, house to condo, or a townhome, right? Happened on Ocean, they put a dozen of these monstrosities up, right? And I understand the desire because sure, it's great money if you can turn a residential into a tourist. It's great money, you can put whatever you want on it. But as a resident, because that's a place I go every day. So I'll just leave it there. So go ahead and do it. Ask the people who live within 2 streets of the crowd if they think that's a great idea, because that's their place. So.
Thank you. Pam?
Pam Rothenberg. I live at 100 Ormond Drive, and I own property at 1441 South Miramar, which is Tuckaway Shores, and own and operate a business there. I am in favor of the rezoning of this area. You know, in terms of the number of people it's going to bring in or impact, it's going to be the same, whether it's long-term rentals or short-term rentals. And to me, I was surprised to learn that that area was zoned differently than the rest of the east side of the street. It's well maintained. When we bought the business at Tuckaway 7 years ago, I looked out the window and I had buyer's remorse because of the condition of the property. And since it's been renovated, I mean, it clearly is an entirely different aesthetic. And there aren't riffraff hanging around that beach access. Everybody enjoys the beach during the day, but I saw what was hanging out at the beach at night and it really gave a very unfavorable impression of the community and impacted our business. So the changes that I've seen over the last several years have been very positive. And I'll speak on behalf of my husband, he is also in favor of rezoning.
Thank you. Other public comment? Anyone? All right. Yeah. Yeah, no, you don't have to. No,
No, you just come up and.
just, yeah, come up. Name, address.
Hi, Ann Mosley, 1501 Miramar. It's my property we're talking about. It's not a single-family home. It's a multifamily. It's also, I live and breathe vacation people all the time there. Everyone that goes to the beach, Tuckaway has 10 apartments there that face me directly. I'm in a conforming lot on top of it, even though I am in R1A. So I am the only multifamily property in R1. And I think I'm the only multifamily property east of A1A or Miramar that cannot do short.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, just name and address.
Yeah. My name is Frank Godwin, and that's owner of 63 and 53. There, Tampa Avenue. Road there is Tampa Avenue. It's not A1A for some reason. Don't ask me why. But
Let me interrupt. He's the property owner to the east of
To the
Ann. So
east.
he's the one that doesn't have the application in, but would be affected by this.
that is residential now, yes, and it would be changed. I bought that property in 1974, and it was a piece of crap. The other area that you're talking about, the 3 units there, was falling down totally. Just a sad piece of property. And I had bought that property from there to the road in 1974. And I was able to sell the 3 properties that she's got several years later, and it just went downhill until she got a hold of it. So, the way things have gone with that particular, picture there, it was apartments there. There were 2, it was a, what do you call it when you got 2 apartments in one building?
Duplex.
Yeah, duplex. So that was a duplex for many years after I bought it. When I retired, I had it rezoned for residential. And that's when I bought the property 63 also, a little bit later down the road. So, but things have changed, and you all know that with the tourists that we have now. And I'm retiring because I'm 86 years. I don't have too much more time. So I want my family to able to take that property and possibly make a good living out of it. So with that being rezoned, it's a very, very good fit. So from my particular point of view, it is something that needs to be done. I've spent thousands and thousands of dollars along with someone over here on those properties and bringing them up to where they now are now. So anyway, that's it. That's the story, backstory on that property.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, appreciate that.
Your time. Mr. Mayor, I have a question for Mr. Godwin and for Ms. Mosley. Since you all are talking about piggybacking off the Mosley application to add these 2 additional parcels, that could impact the Mosley application, pro or con. I'm not sure how, but it could impact it. And I would like to ask if the property owners have any objection to combining it into one application.
Since I have multifamily and he has single family, so you have to come up.
Yeah.
Doug's a stickler about it.
No, you're fine.
Since mine is multifamily and his is single family, will that make a difference on the,
Don't know.
don't know?
I mean, that's my opinion, which matters not tonight.
It will.
Is that it would make the most logical sense if it was consistent within the
All in
block.
one?
The
Okay.
block, whether that means it's better or worse, I can't say, but.
And the
I'm
weird
fine
part
with
is,
it.
his lot, it's 2 lots, but when you look at it,
It's-
it almost looks like it's one multifamily.
Right.
I always thought it was that.
Right.
So it's another
It's an
weird
artifact-
nuance
it's an
about it. That's-
Artifact, like the apartment building on Tampa Ave.
Yeah.
So if
Let's
there's-
make it all
if
cohesive.
there's no objection by the property owners, the reason I ask is because then it would be advertised as one application, which cuts down on the advertising costs
Okay.
and would be processed together.
So how does that happen? Do they need to get with Molly?
Probably.
No, on the record, they just presented.
Okay, so that,
The current application
It's going to
only
be
has-
expected to include all 3 properties.
Okay,
and planning will be notified
One
through
one
property.
advertisement for all 3.
And ZMP will be notified through whatever channel. Correct?
Yes.
Okay. So your motion basically passed without a vote.
Well, we got to vote. Well, I guess by default, you're saying they're now applying. Yeah, okay, that's fair.
Is that right, Paul?
Yeah.
All right. End of
Thank you for the
discussion.
discussion.
Take a 2-minute break while Joe gives us interpretive dance. I'm gonna head out. Or Chief can do it too. You never know.
Good night.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good night. Good night. Good night.
That's cool. He showed up. I see him at the beach all the time.
Yeah, he's swimming.
Yeah.
Swims in the water.
No, I know. I was teasing you.
I have an office next to the finance
Yeah,
director.
you-
I have to speak up.
I know. I understand. I know the pressures are on you about that stuff. So, I don't know. Do you ever see, the guy Dewey?
Getting in is easier than getting out in a high surf, high tide.
Yeah, yeah. But I mean, if you're swimming, you're already in a good situation. You're going parallel the rip current thing.
That too. That's the worst part. You turn around and get smashed in traffic. Going into the ocean, getting out.
Ours, the rippers, we have.
It's like coffee in the coffee pot.
This is the reason I say that. Is that I here, right? Surfing like all the water.
Flags on white. Here.
Everybody left. Yeah.
Trapped now, Greg.
You're the 6th man. I'm gonna sit on this. That's how I felt for like a year and a half.
70. All right.
Oh, and Molly, you ready? Greg is waiting. He's got singles. All right. We will,
The meaning of the word on. Is that what we're just next?
meaning of the word on, yeah. All right, discuss up. It's 9, section 103-286. That's brought up by me. In the packet, it has a pretty good summary.
Lauren's like 3 places. This is really kind of weird.
Yeah, Lauren is.
Like behind me, in front of me. There we go.
So the summary is pretty much caps everything. Read the summary, the discussion. So any comments from Stu?
My comments pretty much echo Joe's as far as mulch and the rubber mulch and salt.
Sure.
I don't see a problem with allowing for part native in that area. You know, that piece, that strip. Although it won't be popular with many residents from my experience. So as long as we don't disallow turf grass.
Right. Well, I think that the bigger thing is allowing things other than Florida native or as large gravel. That's the goal.
Well, that originally,
What's
I'm sorry. Originally, we didn't do that because it tears up the road, so I'd have to ask Joe if it's still a defect, still a problem.
Yeah, I'm still against doing any gravel in the right-of-way. Do sod or ground cover only, unfortunately.
Doug?
I mean,
You want me to come back to you?
no, I mean, I tend to agree with Joe. I just, I get it. People want to do more. I know there's residents in Mel Beach that have gravel spots. There's the right across from Orlando Park. They just put a new yard, and right around the drain they put in. That was.
Yes, that's what brought this up. Yeah.
Yeah. So it doesn't look bad, and especially in that little, just little section, right? But I wouldn't want to see a whole side yard of gravel either.
Well, the problem is the rock is on a storm drain.
Right, and it goes down the drain.
Yeah.
But if it doesn't float, is it a problem?
Well,
But now it's
get
going to
enough
my
of them
storm
down the
drain, now I
drain,
gotta
it
clean it
becomes
out.
a storm retain. So I guess it's a question of, I got the word in, the first part, I guess I got distracted with that. The mulch, I get that, we just, the road. I understand the desire to have more flexibility, but I guess it needs to maybe less than what we've got in front of us.
Yeah. Another consideration brought up by Paul is the definition of street is only right-of-ways that are 30 feet or wider.
Oh, well, that's only like half the roads in Indian Atlantic.
Right. So anything under that, this doesn't apply, and people could put gravel down if they want. They can put mulch down if they want.
So my road, which is probably 2025.
Yeah, I don't know what the right-of-way. I mean, Joe, do you know what right-of-way widths are in town? Like,
There are 25, there's 50, 60, and I think there's a 30.
so anything under 30, this doesn't apply, and people can do whatever they want.
No,
Yes,
it's
the center of the
30
roadway is the
center
right of
road.
way, that's not the
30
street.
feet center road, so. After 30 feet center road, yes, they can do what they want. If you go by your water meter or a utility pole, that's where you can do whatever you want.
Right. But my understanding, and maybe I read it wrong, but the definition in this section of street is 30 feet, it only pertains to right-of-ways that are 30 feet or wider. So any right-of-way under 30 feet, this doesn't apply. I mean, the existing rule doesn't apply.
Let's frame the issue. I'm a little bit confused by what the overall issue is here. So what's the issue that we're trying to address here?
So there's, at Tampa,
Well, I know what the,
right,
yeah,
so,
those rocks around, like the.
Right,
okay,
allowing the-
That's specifically the issue that we're trying to deal with and how it
Well,
would apply in other instances and things of
right,
that nature.
right, that's what brought it up. So
Okay.
what do you call it? Florida best practices, according to the landscaper. I talked with Vinny, the sustainable committee, sustainability, yeah, that committee.
And resilience.
They recommend the Florida natives as the first option along the right of ways or around drains, because they filter plants and they don't require or filter water runoff. They don't require any maintenance.
So Florida native plants, shrubs, bush, like.
Yeah, Florida natives.
I mean, that's very
Yeah.
broad and all-encompassing.
Recommendation then.
Right.
They have a brochure, Brett, that they actually can, that they can give residents that talk about the exact types and spacing and everything in the basin of swales and areas that allow for the filtration. You can get very specific.
So, I mean, we could theoretically have Florida native, some sort of rock.
I believe it's Florida native plants,
Okay.
but that's a good thought. So that's the first, that's the best option from a water runoff standpoint. The next best option is large gravel, because it allows water to run off the road and not into the drainage, and it goes into the ground underneath. But
Permeable.
right, permeable. Thank you. So that is not currently allowed per our code to have that or to allow that. So right now it's grass, turf grass, or Florida natives only. And so this,
Does mulch fall within Florida natives?
no,
Okay.
it's plants only.
Okay.
And the problem with mulch is
Clogs it up.
right, it clogs it up, it floats, it goes into the river, into the road, potentially into the river too. But, if it's crafted in a way that we can allow rock that won't float, won't shift into the road, I get that. That's that's obviously an issue for traction. It'd have to be a certain minimum size of, 2-inch, Joe, you may know better, but, 2-inch, something like that.
As far as it allow like gravel or rock that has to be a certain size, or what if we like require some sort of bordering so that can't theoretically not supposed to.
I think that becomes a safety thing.
Okay.
With cars driving over it.
Not trying to overcomplicate it.
Now, a problem with doing in the right of way, people can use it as a driveway.
And that's not allowed?
Absolutely.
No.
We don't want, we don't want their in the front.
We'll talk to my neighbors, because they park cars in the front all the time.
Okay. So now, when we're saying the right of way, how are we defining that? Because there's various rights of way, right?
The right of way is Center Road, 30 feet towards your home. Actually, where the water meter's at, where the utility pole's at, that's where the property, you can do whatever you want. So if you're inside that pole in street, you can't be in there.
Because don't we have a right of way on my lot, and that's got a bunch of rock in it?
There are houses that have rocks.
But it's not like it's I think it's technically called right of way. Do you know what I'm talking about? Where-
It was left over from the original platting.
Right.
Yeah.
Remember the one property owner was trying to like expand and really nix that?
Angling.
So there are some driveways that are rock,
Yep.
but nowadays we can't do it per our new ordinance, or our ordinance cannot do that.
Okay. So those ones that are rock are like
They're
non-conforming.
grandfathered in.
They're grandfathered in, yeah. Because I can think of one on Tampa.
One next door to me.
And then what we got to do is go sweep it up if they don't do it.
Yeah, it comes a pain in the butt for you. Okay.
I have a question for the chief. I kind of fear putting large rocks by the road. And Saturday night, a couple of beers later, seeing the large rocks going towards cars, being used as weapons or for vandalism. Any?
Not really, no. I mean, it hasn't been an issue in the past. We haven't had rocks thrown at cars in a very long time that I can think of, so.
Lauren?
Yeah, Mark, first of all, I want to thank you for the right, gave a lot of context, so as I read it as a council member, I could understand a lot of the position to think about it prior to. It's well constructed. It helped me quite a bit.
I could
Number
not.
two, well, it's I understood everything, and I'm going to ask a question related to that. What's the driving force, Mark, on this particular one? Have homeowners or groups of people come related to aesthetics that have requested this? Is something that you've looked at with the landscape designer and you think would your initiative to help? What's driving the reason it's on the agenda?
Well, it was like the, I guess the summary says there was a landscaper who brought it to my attention, so I started looking it up, and then I talked with Vinny about it, and so it just kind of went from there. The big thing that started it was, well, what's the definition of in? Because I guess what was lost in translation was right-of-way versus the pavement. That's kind of how it all started, but then as I dug into it, found out, with Vinny, he's like, oh yeah, no, rocks are actually really good from a sustainability and Indian viewpoint.
Got it. Okay, and I've actually talked with Vinny quite a bit on swales and when grass is in there, the fact they don't work very well because it doesn't percolate. There are the other issues. Joe, the two issues I've heard coming up, one is the idea that these could impede the storm or increase maintenance costs within the baffle boxes. Are stones truly one of your top or even top items that are pulled regularly from the baffle boxes as they are? In other words, are you saying, hey, we already deal with this a lot of the time, or are they less in the baffle boxes?
They're less.
Stones of the type we'd approve.
They're less because we don't allow it.
Well, I don't know if I believe that. There's still areas that have stone. I know, I go around as I walk the doggies and see. Do you regularly pull out of baffle boxes the type of stone we pass this currently? And you're saying no because we don't allow it. Correct? Okay, so the answer is we don't know the answer, whether they're really going to draw. No one's done a water run of something to see how much these stones move. We're talking about river rock. It depends. Some of my stuff really stays quite put. Not that it's in the right of way, but I have some in an area where it's near downspouts and other swifter flowing water, at least on my property. Okay, but the other item you brought up that's concern would be that people would park more regularly, not on the street or their own grass, but use that area as a parking area within the right of way. That was the other concern, correct?
Yes.
Is that a greater concern than the baffle boxes? Less concern, in your viewpoint?
I just know we don't allow parking off the street.
We don't encourage it because my understanding is the reason for right-of-ways are really twofold. Not to simplify it, but one is the utilities need to run through there, so you need the ability to pull through, and Paul will correct me if I'm wrong. The other important thing is emergency. That's why we actually have something that I remember 24 years ago discussing in front of the council about solid objects in the right-of-way are prohibited. And, the definition of what a solid object was discussed, because we certainly have mailboxes in right-of-ways and utility poles and other things that don't allow emergency vehicles to go through. But the idea is to keep those lanes clear, whether a police car or an ambulance or a fire engine needs to go through there. We need to be able to allow to have ingress and egress through those areas should they need to get there. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, Mark, from my viewpoint, we have at least one compelling reason from the parking. I'm not against it related to the baffle. I believe that has been shown that we're really going to have the type of stones that you and frankly, Vinny and others would probably stay put. So I'm fixed on it.
Okay.
That help? Or
Yeah,
do you
yeah.
have any response to that? Or
No,
might
that's
you have
good.
thought of these things? Okay.
The only thing I would bring up, is what is the parking ordinance? You're saying they can't park on the street
In the right of way.
in the right of way? Because I've asked about that with Casey, and he's like, yeah, no, we don't have any ordinance that prevents it.
We also don't have an ordinance that prohibits you from driving your car onto the lawn and parking in your front yard.
Yeah, because I asked about that too.
Yeah.
I'm good.
Which, add that to your list.
Yeah. Absolutely.
If we, I don't, I don't think we need to address the issue at hand. I understand the request, but if we do move forward with rocks, then we have to specify a minimum size of rocks, and now we gotta have somebody go max, because somebody's gonna buy rocks that are smaller because they were cheaper on Home Depot or Lowe's, or they don't care, or they like the different color, and then they put them down, and now we gotta go knock on the door and tell them they have 2 smaller rocks. So
Yeah, I could see that. But there's also anything placed in the right of way needs approval by Joe anyway.
I first want to clarify something. Mark, by no means was it your write-up. I had a tough time understanding with the issue. It's because of the language in the statute, or in the ordinance, excuse me, thank you. And we continually talk about right-of-way, and nothing in the ordinance. There's no mention of right-of-way.
Right.
So I do think we need to do some sort of, revision or clarifying in this ordinance. In all honesty, this ordinance is already on the list of code things we're going to address, because it would always come up in code enforcement, the section about like maintaining a neat and attractive lawn, like what is that? It's pretty ambiguous. And so, yeah, whether or not we allow rocks or whatever it may be, I do think we need to add some sort of language in here to clarify that we're trying to address the right-of-way space, not just the street.
Well, I think the issue is buried in the definition of street, which looks at until they.
The street says right-of-way?
Well,
Definition of
it's
street.
defined as so many feet from the center line.
Right.
Like to either side, and so we think the street is the physical pavement. It is not, it is beyond that.
Right, correct. Yeah, that's why I would add some clarifying language about.
Right, so.
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah.
Hasn't that been stated? If you go to the center line, and when we discussed this under the former town manager Chenault, if you go to the center line of your road and measure 30 feet into your property, that line, the right-of-way from or what, correct, Joe, right? Because I know that I'm not supposed to plant anything or do anything in the right-of-way up to that point. And of course, my water meter is within, as you stated, that 30-feet zone.
I think it varies by street, right?
It does.
Perfect.
Okay, and Joe, what section of the code, or I guess I should have Chief, if you were going to, one of your officers were going to cite a code enforcement infraction of an object in the right-of-way that should not be there, what section would you cite, please, of our ordinances?
103-286, landscaping A, B, C, or D, depending on what the violation is.
All right, so Brett, those would be the areas I urge you to either look at and come back with updated verbiage or.
Yeah, we just need like one sentence, like for the avoidance of doubt, this prohibition shall, include, or the definition of street includes, 30 feet, which is very obvious that this extends onto your property X amount.
Right. Paul, did you have anything to add? All right. Do we want to do anything with around the baffle boxes, like Lauren suggesting? Anyone? Yeah.
Around the baffle boxes.
Well, it would just be, it would.
Generalized language.
Generalized language about what is permissible. If it's going to be described as different or the same.
Right, so allowing
In the right
gravel
way- in the
to
right
be
way.
around the drainage baffle boxes, but not in the right-of-way in front of the house kind of thing. So if you look at Tampa, or have we talked about Orlando?
Orlando, you're right.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that doesn't that create like a weird scenario where it would be allowed around it, but then it'd still be in violation because it's in the right of way?
You'd have
Correct.
to carve out an exception that
Right.
within a certain
Correct.
distance of the baffle box.
And
So-
plus also, those boxes have storm drains going from one box to another. So if it does fail, now we're replacing someone's decorative rock.
I'll let you think about that.
Yeah.
If it can be done, it can't be done.
including Florida native. The question really becomes, should we have Brett take a look at Florida, the definition of healthy lawn? Or that piece of the code that requires it.
Public comment? Gary?
I'll probably have to talk to Joe about this.
No. All right. Molly, do you have anything to report?
Everyone keep Town Manager Casey in their thoughts and prayers, and we'll keep you posted, and hopefully he'll have a speedy recovery.
All right, for sure. Thank you. Paul?
You have the litigation report was distributed earlier. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Stu?
The only one I have is an email that went out to everybody from the Florida League of I forwarded from the Florida League of Cities. And it deals with the legislative conference in December. It's actually a really good conference. Space Coast League of Cities will pay for one attendee from Indian Atlantic. Just the attendance, not the hotel. Which I would imagine might even be the chief. You just have to, there's just a process to notify the Space Coast League of Cities to include.
Doug?
I just want to echo what Pam earlier with regard to the Veterans Day celebration at Lily Park. It is actually a really cool event that they put on last year. It was spectacular. The guy did the national anthem, sang it, you know, Acapulco, or what, acapella, I guess, not Acapulco. Brilliant. And the only thing this year will be the helicopter flyer that I'm sure Chief Casey will arrange.
Yeah. He's our neighbor, actually. Helicopter guy.
All right.
Brett?
Prior to Veterans Day, which is always a great event that Pam puts on, we like to attend every year, is Halloween, though. And our traditional block party, Cocoa Avenue, 200 block, about 6:30 to 8:30. We do, dogs, brats, s'mores, full-size candy bars, adult beverages, and it's been each year. Who knows? Maybe we'll rival Satellite Beach's Sherwood one day and have a band and such. But anyways, for those who can come out.
Cool. And Lauren?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Space Coast League of Cities has their initiatives they're asking for, and I didn't add it to this docket because I felt it was going to be a little bit longer. There are often, we have in the past, I think, said some things that we think we'd like to see advanced. It's sort of vetted in, so the municipality in Atlantic would give it in. Others have already given some of theirs. If this is something council members want to think about and we want to put on, I don't really know if it's something we want to do. Often we do things we think within the town. These are things that the league would look at and may say, oh, Indian Atlantic is also interested in this, which other towns have been interested in. And remember, they go and do a lot of advocacy and direct lobbying. So it may be something that we want. If there's interest in doing it, I'll put it on for the next meeting, and it's something that I hope the council member-elect also might be interested in saying these are things that they may advance. And the other thing I really want to thank greatly is Molly and IM Solutions. I'm very thankful that you were patient allowing me to be here, and it's nice to have Giuseppe. Molly worked very diligently with all that's going on, and our heart and prayers go out for Mike and Tina and the family for speedy recovery. But she also put together testing with Zoom, figuring things out. Technology can always be interesting, but what a neat way to not only allow folks to participate, but for what you were able to do, Mr. Mayor, to pull someone over to present very effectively and capture it on YouTube and let the public see it. What a great way for additional transparency. So I'm very thankful. What may seem like small initiatives, I think actually was something that staff has learned that's going to be very helpful for working with other vendors and just transparency and participation. So I'm very grateful. Thank you.
Definitely. Thank you, Molly. Thank you, IM Solutions. Meeting adjourned.
Good night, folks.